The first immunizations with the newly approved AstraZeneca vaccine are underway. The shot was developed in cooperation with Oxford University and British pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca. It could prove to have an edge for some countries struggling to deploy mass immunizations. The shot is less expensive and it's also easier to store. Many experts believe these qualities could make the latest vaccine more accessible for developing countries in particular. And let's get some perspective on the story now. We have Mohammed Munir with us. He's a virologist at Lancaster University in England. Good to have you back with us. How significant is the rollout of this vaccine in particular?
Well, Sumi, if we look really onto the number of cases, those are surging very significantly in the UK, particularly because of the festive season and also the new variant, and we are heading toward the winter. So all in all, situation is pretty grim. And I think the only way we can really get this whole scenario in control is to have a mass vaccination. And that is now the priority in the UK, to have as many people as possible to immunize. And government is planning to have at least 30 million people above 55 years old, including frontline health workers, care homes, to be vaccinated until the Easter time.
Okay, so this vaccine is cheaper, it is easier to store, but what about its safety and efficacy? I mean, was it the right decision by the government there in the UK to rush to start this as the first country in the world?
Well, that is something is pretty debatable. The reason is that we have the data that was published in the very reputable journal, the Lancet journal, but that data isn't really the one that made the basis for the approval of this vaccine. The data that made the approval for this vaccine is only belonging to the government. That is not publicly available. And according to the government, is like this, that if the first dose is given, there is around 70% efficacy. And then if it is the second dose given, then it would be around 80% efficacy with the interval of 3 months. But that is something that we haven't seen the data. So therefore, all is in air, and we don't really know how efficacious would it be, particularly after the first dose.
Okay, that is important to know. And there's another question, Mohammed. Reports now that the British government is worried that this will not be as effective against the South African variant of the virus. Tell us about that.
Yes, South African variant emerged before the UK new variant emerged, and both of these variants emerged independently. There isn't any link, except that there are a few mutations. Those are common. And we have noticed that South Africa has been the worst hit country in the whole Africa, with the highest number of deaths and the infection per capita. So therefore, this is certainly worrying. And when we come to new variant, of course, at the moment, we don't have a data that it will escape the immunity established by the vaccine. But we can't simply ignore that all these variants could jeopardize not only the vaccine campaign, but also the restrictions that have been put in place because of their transmissibility. So certainly, these are the things that need to be looked very carefully in coming days.
Mohammed Munir, virologist from Lancaster University in England. As always, good to talk to you. Germany's Bild newspaper and the Reuters news agency are reporting that Chancellor Merkel's government and regional leaders have agreed to extend Germany's lockdown until the end of January. That's ahead of a planned meeting tomorrow between the Chancellor and 16 regional leaders. Weeks of tougher restrictions on public life have so far failed to effectively bring down infection rates. And the country's vaccination program has gotten off to a sluggish start.
Appeals to stay home seem to have little effect in this Western German winter resort town. A ban on entering the ski runs failed to deter large numbers of people from hitting the slopes at the weekend. So many that police intervened, stopping winter enthusiasts in their tracks. Germany's government, together with the heads of its regional states, must decide on how to proceed with anti-coronavirus measures. There's consensus that a lockdown will have to remain in place beyond January 10th. Bavaria wants it extended by at least 3 more weeks. The numbers are still too high, and we're not yet able to assess how the situation has developed over Christmas, New Year, and especially through the large numbers of travellers returning home. That's why it would be irresponsible to relax the lockdown now. It should be extended until the end of January. On Tuesday, state heads will discuss how long the lockdown should be extended for and whether the current measures should be adjusted. States with lower infection numbers want a shorter lockdown, while those harder hit want measures toughened. We need to act in those areas that are most affected. In this case, that's Saxony and Thuringia. So we'll be toughening measures for our schools and childcare facilities until January 31st, just as we'll be doing with public life. We'll be increasing restrictions even more. A key topic on the agenda is whether nurseries and primary schools should be closed. Some argue that young children struggle with online learning. But Germany's central government remains sceptical about whether physical teaching in schools is a good idea.
Our political correspondent Hans Brandt is tracking the very latest on this story for us. Hi, Hans. We're seeing reports now that the government of Chancellor Angela Merkel is indeed planning to extend the current lockdown measures. What more can you tell us?
Well, that's a further confirmation of rumours and reports that we've had for several days now. Obviously, before the meeting between Angela Merkel and the 16 regional heads, preparatory discussions are ongoing, and I presume that this will be a leak from those preparatory discussions, and it is intended to put those regional states under pressure that might consider not extending the lockdown for as long as everybody else seems to be thinking is correct, until the end of January. In the end, the decision will be taken tomorrow by Angela Merkel and those 16 regional leaders, and those meetings have in the past taken hours, have been at times characterized by very acrimonious debates. So there's no certainty yet that this decision is going to be taken, even if the reports today propose that.
And this all comes amid a lot of questions being asked about Chancellor Merkel's government's vaccine rollout. And we have a graphic, rather, that we can pull up to show this. The country that has administered the most doses per 100 people, as you can see here, is Israel. It's already vaccinated nearly 13% of its population. After that comes Bahrain, the UK, then the US and Denmark rounding out the top 5. But Germany has vaccinated less than 0.3% of its population. That makes it 9th on the list. So, Hans, tell us more about this criticism of Germany and why there's been the sluggish start to vaccinating.
The main criticism is that there is too little vaccine available to make it possible to vaccinate as quickly as everybody would like. That, in fact, is a problem at the moment in the European Union. Only one vaccine is approved. That is the one from BioNTech. A second vaccine may be approved this coming week. So the number of doses that are available to Germany of a vaccine that is contested around the world is comparatively small. At the same time, there are some hiccups in the organization of this vaccination campaign inside Germany. It's not as easy to get a vaccination, even if you're entitled to it as it should be. But at the same time, I think there is a sense of kind of desperation from some regions in Germany that the lockdown measures so far have not worked very well, have not really pushed down the infection rates, and that the last hope is this vaccination. So those regions that are particularly badly affected, such as Bavaria and southern Germany, for instance, are the ones that are pushing harder for the vaccination program to be pushed ahead, to go more quickly, to give it an extra push.
DW political correspondent Hans Brandt, thank you very much. Let's take a look now at some other developments in the pandemic. Japan is considering a state of emergency to slow the spread in Greater Tokyo. That move raises more doubts about whether Tokyo will be able to host the Olympics this summer. South Africa has announced a plan to begin immunizations next month, pending arrival of its first vaccines. The country is the worst hit on the continent. Australia's most populous state, New South Wales, is reporting 0 local coronavirus cases. That state includes Sydney, where residents can be fined on the spot if they don't wear masks in public.